Welcome everyone to Finding Your Freedom podcast, and today is my first podcast with a guest, and my first guest was always a no-brainer. It was always going to be my amazing coach, Victoria Kleinsman, who I used to say I credit with saving my life, but now I say I credit her with helping me save my own life, because I had to do the work, but she was very much the support in the background who was just making it so much easier than I thought it was going to be. So welcome, Victoria, and thank you so much for being my first guest on my podcast.
It's an honour, and I'm glad you corrected yourself because you absolutely did the work. I was just your cheerleader and guide.
Thank you. Yes, I have to remember that I was always very much a person who credited everyone else for the good things in my life, when actually, when you really look at them, yes, you can have amazing people around you who help you and support you. But one thing I learned in recovery is, and I think you said it before, no one's actually coming to save you. And you actually have to take responsibility for being the person who does the work, and then also be able to take the credit for that and actually realize how strong and powerful you are, instead of just giving everyone else the credit. And it's about learning, isn't it? It's about learning how to value yourself and make it so that you realize how far you've come in recovery.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, for me, it was the hardest thing in my life that I've ever had to do. I don't know how you feel about that in comparison to all the things you've been through.
Oh, yeah, I think it was, gosh, how to phrase this? It was the hardest decision I ever made. The decision for me, if I'm honest, was actually felt harder than the process of recovery. It took me 30 years to make the decision. That's how hard that decision for me was. And that was just based around fear. It felt it would be too hard, I would fail, I wouldn't be able to do it. All of those things that just stopped me making a decision. And once I got past that bit, even though some of course, what followed was difficult, to me that was the biggest hurdle. And I don't know if that's the same for people who maybe don't have an eating disorder for that amount of time. Maybe the decision is a little bit easier when you're not feeling like you have to undo 30 years worth of behaviours.
Well, what I see is it tells I know you, but if I didn't know you and this was the first time I heard you speak, I would know so much about you already, and that is this. When you decide something, you are fully committed to making it happen. And that's what you did. What a lot of people do, through no fault of their own, and I'm not saying it's a character flaw, but you definitely have a character strength and you take it very seriously. So when you made that decision, albeit it took 30 years, the decision was made, you were committed to recovery, there was no going back, you knew you would reach the finish line.
Yeah, yeah, I think, yeah, once I'm quite stubborn that way. If I actually manage to commit to something in my head and then feel strongly about it, and I did feel strongly about it once I'd made the decision. I felt strongly that I wanted to get it right. There is no, I guess, right with recovery. But once I'd made that decision, I was determined that having made it, I wasn't going to put myself back through all of the ifs and the whys and the buts, that there was one way and it was forward.
Same. That's why my mantra was whatever it fucking takes. They say, I don't know, when I say they say, who says, like these wise people, Buddha probably, a man, and this is, I guess, sexist, but they say when a man's mind is made up, it's the strongest thing in the universe. And I feel that for myself, and you've experienced it with yourself. When you make your mind up about something, decide. And the word decide comes from the Latin word decis, which means to cut away. So all that is left is what you are working towards. There's nothing more powerful than that, because I had the attitude of like, bring it the fuck on then, try to change my mind, it's not happening. It gave me even more fuel. And that I even kind of faced my fears that way, even though I'm sure we'll go into my story. Facing fears is not nice. Because I was afraid of something, it pissed me off that I was afraid of something. So it gave me even more fire to like keep going through the fear and then coming out the other side. And that is that decision and therefore the commitment after that. And just before we go into it, those that are listening, it wasn't a perfect decision and commitment for me, like it seemed to be with Tara. I thought I decided before to recover, but I hadn't. I was choosing to recover in that moment. But there's a difference between choosing moment to moment and making like a full body decision. And when I decided to recover, I did.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think you have to, and we use the term, I guess, in recovery, going all in many senses. But for me, I have always, with hindsight, looked back and said that going all in, which people can interpret meaning about food or about whatever, for me, when what I interpreted from you when we first spoke, which is what you told me, which is that your approach to recovery is to go all in. That to me was very much a mindset. It was whatever comes up, I am all in, absolutely,
Yeah.
completely in this. No
Yes.
matter, and like you say, and to be all in, you can't really, you can, but I think it's harder to try and make that decision to be in just every day. I had to decide that I was going to be all in from beginning to end, and that, as hard as it might be every day, I was never going to waver from that mindset.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because going all in isn't an action. It's not like this person can go all in and eat 10,000 calories a day and this person can go all in and eat this much a day. It's actually, like you said, it's a mindset. All in is a mindset, and it's also linked to your nervous system and what your nervous system can handle, depending on the stress and the trauma you've endured and all of those things. So, in each moment, all you can do is go all in and give it your best, not try, because trying is asking for permission to fail. Going all in, give it your best, and then you will recover. And everyone's different. So it might take someone with a very sensitive nervous system who's had a lot of trauma, who perhaps hasn't got the attitude of like whatever it fucking takes. It might take them a couple of years to fully recover. Whereas, it took you and Julia Trehane like a matter of months. So it's not about comparing to others because that's not going to be helpful. It's what you said, having that mindset and that state of being of I'm going all in. And that doesn't look a certain way. It's a way you show up and the way you think and the way you act.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Okay, well, for people who are listening who don't know your story, if you wouldn't mind sharing your history, I guess, with your eating disorder and kind of where that began.
How do you want me to go into detail or do you want me to put a long story short? It depends on where you want this to go because I can do a long story in detail or I can do a very brief one and you can pick bits out. How do you want me
Yeah,
to?
but if you just want to, I mean, you had, I guess, I had one version of an eating disorder which was anorexia, but I think you started in that place and then that changed over time. So you had different experiences with different kind of behaviours with your eating disorder. So if you just want to kind of maybe tell the listeners those, because I don't know if I don't know if, like you say, I only ever had one approach, but I'm aware from now being in a community with people with eating disorders that it isn't always that simple, is it? People can have variations of their eating disorder with different behaviours over different times.
Yes, definitely. I'll start there. So I was diagnosed with anorexia as a young person. I think every podcast I'm interviewed in, I either say the age 11, 12 or 13 because it's quite blurry, but I think it was 11 the behaviours kind of started, the very severe restriction. I was in the doctor's office around the age of 12. It was when I was just starting the first year of secondary school, so that would have been just turning 12. I remember being taken into the doctor's place with my mum and the doctor giving her a leaflet that said anorexia nervosa on it. And I remember being like, no, 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 that's not me. I'm in control of this. Like, that's not, I was so resistant to being told that I had this illness, this disease. So it started when I was that young. And then over time, I got pushed into treatment, which did kind of save my life, even though I hated every minute of it. I quote unquote recovered, and I always say quote unquote recovered because I was weight restored, or so they thought. The professionals thought I was weight restored because I was back in the healthy BMI bracket. But I very much had an eating disorder in my head. And yes, my behaviours weren't in an anorexic way anymore, meaning that I was at least eating regularly throughout the day. I wasn't afraid of food in the same way that I was in anorexia, I was still very afraid of food, but it wasn't like I would rather die than eat. In the anorexia, it felt like I would rather have had someone hold a gun to my head than eat a chip, for example. So I did change that, and that was because the migration response was switched off, and we can go into that if you like. But then my anorexia morphed into what I thought was binge eating, but I found out later it was bulimia, meaning I would then binge, which was actually extreme hunger, and no one even told me in the professional space of anorexia recovery what extreme hunger even was, what it looked like, what it felt like. So I just saw it and labelled it as binge eating. It was eating a shitload of food. And then because I hadn't recovered mentally and emotionally, I would feel bad about it, a shitload of shame would come up, I had all these body image issues come up. I would then compensate and purge by using laxatives, constantly trying to induce vomiting. Thank goodness my body physically can't vomit on demand, thankfully, but God, I tried. And over exercising, and then severe restriction. And that pattern continued from the age of, so if I was in anorexia around 11, 12, that was probably, I was quote unquote weight restored, which I actually wasn't, probably around the age of 16. And then that cycle continued until I was 30. So another 16 years of an eating disorder that was labelled bulimia. And then before that, there was childhood stuff, trauma. In between the eating disorders, there was sexual abuse, rape, all that kind of stuff. And I don't say that lightly. I know I'm saying it lightly now, but there was stuff intertwined in it all which kept my self-worth low and all the things.
Yeah, okay. Just one thing that came up there. So when you say you went into treatment and you hated it, but it got you physically recovered. So
Yeah.
for people who maybe haven't experienced eating disorders or who are in one and maybe haven't kind of made the link yet between recovery and true recovery, you say it recovered your body, but it didn't recover your what was in your head. So for people listening then, what do you think then wasn't done with you in treatment that didn't cure what was in your head and what kept you in your eating disorder for such a long time?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to say my body wasn't fully recovered. We thought it was because I was in the BMI bracket of healthy. My natural set point weight, I mean, it's changed a little bit over time. I'm 38 now. I've been through pregnancy. I've had a baby. It's changed a little bit, but this size, it's interesting. I saw a photo of me when I was at my natural set point, but I didn't realize I was. It was a brief gap in between the anorexia when I would have been about 19, where for a few months I had a normal relationship with food because everything in my life improved. And I know now that that was my set point, and I basically look the same, just a little bit older and a little bit saggier because of pregnancy as that. So my set point weight is actually over the healthy BMI. So I wasn't physically recovered, but I was definitely in a lot better and safer place than I had been. And what I feel was missing was honestly the first thing that I feel is missing was someone, a professional, to sit with me, not from a clinical position, with a notepad and with the whole vibe of I'm in a clinical space and no one's my friend and no one gets me, but for someone to sit next to me and be like, you know what, I fucking get you, maybe swear, I mean, I swear a lot, just to come down to my level without I'm not saying professionals were patronizing me. I felt that they were patronizing me. I just felt so distant from them. I just wanted someone to come next to me and be like, you know what, I get it. It fucking sucks. This is how I feel. And you know what? This is how I live now, and you can have this too. So I think the biggest thing was someone who got it and who spoke to me like a friend, which is why I'm a coach now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've been quite open that I had an option to go into traditional recovery, and I was very lucky that I had private healthcare that was going to pay a huge amount of money for that to happen. And what was prescribed to me at that time, in terms that was because I was quite unwell at that point physically, was that I would be going to inpatient treatment for 6 weeks every day in a clinical setting. And it felt wrong in my gut. Now I had no experience actually. I didn't actually even speak to anyone who'd been through that to have a, a true sense of whether that would have worked for me or not. But it didn't feel right in my gut. And I think when I spoke to you, I think I made it quite clear that I don't want the next 50 years of my life for my head to be full of the constant noise and the thoughts and the fears. For me, I think I had a sense that I could probably physically eat and recover, but only once what was going on in my head was being addressed at the same time. And for me, again, my sense was that I would achieve that more with someone who had experience of what was going on in my head and who would just be, even if some days it's just a cheerleader and someone who
Yeah.
goes, you can do it. I'm here for you and all of that. And that's, I guess, thank God, why coaching worked for me. But I do think it's definitely difficult for people, I guess, who've got to a point where their BMI is healthy and they are kind of left then to fend for themselves. And probably explains rate of relapse, or people who are just living with a bit of a quieter eating disorder. They physically look well, but they're probably still tormenting themselves a little bit in their minds.
Yeah, it's so common because the second biggest thing that is missing in recovery traditional treatment is all the deeper work. They haven't got capacity, especially at the NHS, they haven't got the resources to do this. But the deeper work of like identity, like who the hell are you when you no longer have an eating disorder? I mean, soul level work, body image work, self love, everything that encompasses that, such as how to say no and stop people pleasing. Like, recovery, and I truly believe this, you can only fully recover from an eating disorder, any eating disorder, if you take a holistic approach to recovery. Yes, if someone is severely underweight and malnourished, it needs to be rehabilitation nutritionally first, and all the other stuff underneath. Otherwise, it's just putting a plaster on a wound. Like treatment centres, you get your weight up, okay, off you go then, have fun with an eating disorder for the rest of your life, and then people relapse. There's so much missing in traditional treatment.
Yeah, I agree. And I think actually when I think back to our first sessions, I was really quite scared of what my life would look like on the other side of an eating disorder, because a lot of my eating disorder behaviors were affecting not just my body and my weight, but they were affecting lots of things going on in my life. So I had all kinds of eating disorder behaviors, like the people pleasing, the perfectionism, the need for validation, the control, which was spilling out into all areas of my life. And I think we talked a lot. I think we probably had, maybe in our first two sessions, probably me telling you a lot about what I was scared of, and a lot of that actually didn't relate to the eating disorder. But
No.
to I had to feel a little bit. I had to soothe myself a little bit that what we would go through in our coaching would get me to a point where not only would the eating disorder, would the recovery work, but actually beyond that, that I would feel some peace in my head and feel that my life on the other side of that could be better. And like you say, it's such a big picture thing, isn't it? Because your eating disorder behaviours, a lot of them that maybe the cause of your eating disorder are probably things that are impacting all of the rest of your life. And for me, it felt like all consuming. The people pleasing, the control, the perfectionism, all of that was consuming all of my life as well as my eating disorder. And I didn't
Yeah.
think that, for me, I don't think I wanted to know that if I put myself through recovery, that on the other side of that would be a life where all of those things then didn't control the rest of my life, if that makes sense.
It does, because everything's connected. And how you do one thing is how you do everything. So if you look at your relationship with food, and this is to your listeners, if you just look at primarily your relationship with food, it will tell you so much about your relationship with life and with yourself, because it's all connected. The perfectionism, the people pleasing, you had almost an addiction to work that's very
Yeah,
common. The busyness, the not being able to rest. Yes, it's not about food specifically, but it's all connected.
yeah, yeah. And like you say, I sensed in a traditional setting that I didn't know, but for me it was important that I knew that I would have someone who, if I wanted to have a session not particularly in about talking about my eating disorder specifically, but I could talk about all the other things that were going on around that, which I knew were connected. But I didn't want anyone to limit me to just what are you eating, what is your weight going up, and because that what it was like I say, I'd got to this point where I'd made this decision, and I wanted what was on the other side to be so worth it, and
Mm.
that had to encompass everything. So I think what I really found useful sometimes was just sitting sometimes with you for half an hour on our session and talking about work and talking about family and talking about relationships and talking about all those other things as well as the eating disorder, because like you say, they were so closely connected, and just by getting all of that out and talking about all of that, it was helping with the eating disorder, but it was also helping me have this complete faith that what was on the other side was going to be so much better than the eating disorder.
Yeah, absolutely. And we need to be doing that. We didn't weigh you. In fact, we hardly, I mean, obviously we spoke about food, but we didn't speak
Yeah.
about, probably if you had to put it in percentage, the percentage of our coaching where we spoke about literally food and what to eat and how much to eat was probably, would you say, like 25% of the coaching?
Yeah, we didn't particularly, because you thankfully encouraged me quite early on to ditch the scales, so we didn't talk about weight that
Oh,
much, because obviously it was. I think I still had. I did for a while try to speculate without knowing the truth, and then eventually we got to a point where speculating didn't matter, the numbers didn't matter.
yeah,
It took, it was
exactly
kind of a
that.
weaning process, wasn't it? You get rid of the scales, but you still try and guess what you might be
Oh,
because you're
you do.
so
You
used to
look at,
wanting to
you
know.
pinch your body and you look at your
Yeah,
clothes and all the things,
yeah,
and you're
yeah.
just like, you know what, fuck this. I'm
Yeah.
done.
It's like I don't know, so why am I speculating? And then eventually it becomes less important. Could I ask, talking about your recovery, so just so you obviously got to a point where prior to where you are now, and finally kind of getting to that point where recovery is for you is that changed your life. Was there an absolute low point? Because, like you say, you'd been through all of those versions of your eating disorder and behaviours. Did you have a kind of a low, a day, a rock bottom that changed everything, or was it with me? Because I never had that. I just got up one day and couldn't and made a call, but I didn't have that defining moment, and I'm just curious as to whether you did. Did something happen
I
that made
did.
you finally go, fuck it?
Yes, I did. And I remember it so well. I was in the Netherlands because when I met my now husband, I had a full blown, still in full blown in the eating disorder. I'd moved away from England to the Netherlands. I was isolating myself because I didn't want to tell my family that I wasn't doing well. I didn't know how to share with my newish partner that I wasn't doing well. So, as usual, the old version of me would just keep everything inside, just get on with it, put on a smile on your face, and just suppress as much as possible. And at this point, the binge eating was taking over. So I was still in the bulimia, I was still taking laxatives and over exercising and attempting to severely restrict the next day. But I seemed to have lost my ability to restrict food. So I was still able to participate in the purging behaviours, but thankfully it was a blessing in disguise. I was unable to restrict anymore. So the binge eating, which was basically extreme hunger, was getting worse and worse. And I remember I was cutting up some brownies because I started my own bakery business when I moved over here, because the brownies over here are shit and I wanted English brownies, like actual gooey nice brownies. So I
Yeah,
started my own business and I was cutting up some brownies and I cut my hand, not bad, but it was bad enough that there's blood everywhere. And I remember sitting on the floor and just crying so hard, the crying where you can't breathe because you're just like literally like you can't see, like you can't breathe. It wasn't just the brownies and my hand cutting, everything that I'd suppressed for so long just came on top of me. And I remember sitting there on the floor being so afraid of my own thoughts, being so afraid of myself and my mind. I just wanted someone to come and whisk me away and put me in a mental institute and drug me up so I could just be away from myself. Like
yeah,
I didn't have suicidal thoughts or anything like that, but I couldn't be me anymore. It was like that was the breaking point, and that was when I actually shared with Wouter, my partner, I need help. And for me to ask for help, oh my God, because I had associated asking for help with the ultimate weakness. Because you're a strong woman, you just get on with it. You praised for being strong and independent. And I just completely broke down, shattered in pieces, and was like, I need help. I hate myself. I hate my life. I don't even know who I am. I can't do this anymore. And when I admitted, I mean, it's not admitting now because it's such a strength to ask for help. I thought it was admitting that I needed help. Everything started to shift. It wasn't like all plain sailing after that, but after that point I was like, I can't be me anymore. Like, I need to leave who I am. Someone needs to help me. And that's when I hired my first coach, and it went from there.
Yeah. It's interesting what you say about asking for help feeling like a weakness. I think your eating disorder likes you to feel weak, doesn't it? It likes you to feel weak because it likes to keep you where you are.
Yeah.
It likes you to feel that that's the only safe place for you. And I know certainly, I think you were the first person I really kind of, I think, said in person too, I have an eating disorder. But once I started to share, I found that really hard because I think I felt a lot of shame that as a grown woman, like you say, I'd got to a point in my life where I'd achieved so much on the outside, but actually the reality was that everything was just a total mess, literally in my head and in my body. And I felt so much shame around that. And I think once you get over that, and once you start to accept that you have an eating disorder, and you start to ask for help, and you start to ask for support, and you start to reach out, it's amazing how quick that shame goes away. And then I very quickly went into someone who was, instead of being ashamed of my eating disorder, I was actually proud to talk about recovering from my
Yeah.
eating disorder. And I
Yes.
wanted everyone to know. And people asked me questions that weren't directly related, but I would end up coming out with, "Oh, I'm recovering from an eating disorder," because all of a sudden that shame that had held me back for so long just felt like this inner fire
Yes.
to go, I'm not hiding this anymore. I'm recovering, and I don't care who knows. I don't care if you judge, and I don't care what you think.
Yeah.
It's such an amazing thing that
Liberation.
happened quite early on in recovery once I stopped having those shameful thoughts and trying to hide what was really going on.
Yeah, there's a reason why there's that old quote, a problem shared is a problem halved.
Yeah.
It's so true, because even though that's the foundation of change and you have to do the work to get where you want to get to, cracking yourself open and being so vulnerable and just sharing and being honest, probably for honest with yourself for the first time, truly, that's what changed it for me. And yeah, I still felt a lot of shame, but when shame is met with love, it just heals on its by itself. Obviously, you have to then keep sharing what you feel ashamed of and take action in safe places against what the shameful version of you would do. But that's how we heal shame. We don't heal it by ourselves in the darkness,
Yeah, you
hiding.
can't keep it to yourself. Like one, that's the whole point with shame, isn't it? By keeping it to yourself, that keeps you in shame. It's only by being open and releasing that, and actually, and not caring what people think of it or judge about it. Once, like you say, we talked a lot about self worth, and once you build your self worth, you can let go of that shame and all of that guilt. And once you're feeling more worthy, more strong in yourself, like you say, it turns into something that really, for me, like you say, made me very proud to talk about my recovery, made me very proud to own it, and actually made me, I think, just more determined than ever that I was going to beat the eating disorder. I'd said it, the shame was gone, the guilt was gone, and this real determination took over. And I don't care what everyone thinks, and I want the world to know, and you can watch me do it.
Yeah. That is using that energy and directing it in the right place.
Yeah. Just one thing I didn't know actually about you, and it brings up something that I think will resonate with people with eating disorders. So you, in the midst of your eating disorder, decide to set up a brownie business, which
Yes.
obviously is literally face to face every day with food, which people think that when you're an eating disorder that we do everything we can to avoid food. And yes, we might do everything. I certainly
Mm.
avoided eating food. Other people don't
Yeah.
necessarily avoid food, but they will have all kinds of issues with it. So, but I think what people don't realize is that we actually become quite obsessed with food when we have an eating disorder, even if we're not eating it ourselves. And would you mind explaining that to people, how that kind of how that even would make sense to somebody. Why we become obsessed with food, either cooking for others, wanting others to eat, looking at food online, looking at recipe books. Why? Because to anyone without an eating disorder, that wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's because your body's starving. Your body wants it and needs it. Your mind wants it and needs it. So I used to smell, and I actually, smelling is one of my strongest senses. So I still smell food before I eat it, but I would smell everything and I just wouldn't eat it. So when I was baking, I would like smell it and try to imagine eating it without allowing myself to eat it. I would go on YouTube and watch food challenges of these women and men like eating like 20,000, 30,000 calories in one go, and I called it food porn. Like I would literally have
Yeah,
this
I did
drive
that.
and almost like, yeah, like a guilty pleasure to watch people eat and be around food and feed people. The more other people ate, especially my partner, the safer I felt because they were eating more than me. Because
Yeah,
we have this obsession with food without allowing ourselves to eat it because we're literally starving. Whether we look starving or not, that doesn't matter. If we're living from a scarcity mindset, and your body thinks there is not enough food because your body, if your body had its own kind of self, this is a bit of a weird thing to say, but your body doesn't understand why you're not eating and nourishing it. It just automatically assumes you're in a famine because otherwise you would just eat. Why would you not eat? Your body doesn't know you're trying to feel safe or control things or get six pack or be thin. Your body's like, oh my God, we're in a famine. So the brain becomes obsessed with food because it's what you want. It makes sense.
yeah, yeah. I watched all the food challenges with this
Yeah.
kind of sense of envy and amazement, and I could
Mm.
sit there for hours, like you say, looking at it. And sometimes I'd do this thing where I was like, right, tomorrow I'm not recreate this like crazy eating challenge, but I would sit there and I would go, I'm gonna eat that tomorrow. Right, tomorrow, very definite decision. Tomorrow I'm gonna eat that. Looks amazing. I'm gonna, somebody eating 10 burgers. Tomorrow I'm having a burger, and I would sit there and convince myself that I was going to, and of course I never would. But yeah, I just used to find it enthralling, and I think people do probably think that's a bit strange for people with an eating disorder because I think they think we're very anti-food. And
Yeah.
actually, I think I said to you in my first session, because I thought I had to explain this to you, but you would already have known that, and I felt like I had to really kind of tell you. I was like, I love food. I kind of really wanted you to understand that, and you weren't like you didn't need to understand it because most people with an eating disorder love food. We just stop ourselves either having it or we beat ourselves up for having it and go through all the guilt and the shame. I think there's an assumption out there that people with eating disorders hate food because
Yeah.
they don't eat it and they don't want it and they want to avoid it. When actually, I can't think I can't think of any. There's not much more I love more than food. Probably my dog, but
Yeah.
apart from that, pretty much it's
It's
food.
true. Most people with eating disorders have a love-hate relationship with food, and they see food as a threat. So people that fall into the binge eating and bulimia category, when they eat food and they eat it really fast, and they're wondering like, why am I eating this food so fast? Number one, it's because you're starving and you need more because your body's like, give me more. But the primary reason is you're showing your body and your nervous system food is a threat because you're avoiding food, you're feeling guilty about eating food. Whatever's going on up here in your mind has a somatic effect on your body and your behaviors. So if you're showing your body through your behaviors and your thoughts about food that it's a threat, you're going to eat it quickly. And I used to, if I'd go, let's say I would go to you for a cup of tea and I was an eating disorder and I clocked a tin of Quality Streets on your cupboard high up in a shelf or something. I'd be the whole time I'd be with you. I mean, I'd be having a conversation with you, but in the eating disorder, I'll be thinking, I wonder if there's Quality Streets in there. I wonder if I wonder if the tins. I would literally be obsessed with a tin of biscuits, or I couldn't stop thinking about it. But now, because I'm well nourished and I eat with pleasure and I just eat whatever the fuck I want, food is just a pleasurable part of life that just gets to be food.
Yeah, I think my first experience of that, where it changed my thought about kind of obsession of food. I think I spoke to. I had
Mm.
an afternoon tea plan with friends. And I've always, even throughout my eating disorder, I would plan and restrict and restrict and restrict. But I would always indulge in an afternoon tea because it's my thing. And I live in London and we have amazing afternoon teas. So we would book one with the girls and I would eat as much, if not more, than anyone else because I had restricted hard
Yeah.
for that afternoon tea. And I was going to restrict hard after that afternoon tea. But I was going to enjoy it while I was there. And I think I said to you, in the week up to it, it was the first time I used, and the way I used to do it because I was so obsessed, I would pick where we were going, and I would
Yeah.
pick somewhere that had unlimited afternoon tea because if I was going to restrict this hard, I was going to get as much afternoon tea as I could. And I'm not someone who I don't particularly. I don't think it was binge eating disorder, but it would just be if I was going to go out and socialize and prepare for that, I was going to enjoy it. And I think in the week running up to it, all I could think about was catching up with my friends. I was so
Mm.
looking forward to seeing them, and I didn't once look at the menu. I let someone else choose where we were going. And I remember 2 nights before, I sat after my evening meal, and I had a packet of 2 scones with jam and cream, and I ate both. And I thought, and it reminded me I was having afternoon tea, and it was like, yeah, I'm really looking forward to afternoon tea, but I'm having a scone and jam tonight, so that doesn't really matter if I have it on Saturday. Yes, I'll have it because I love it, but it wasn't the main event
Mm.
because I wanted them on the Wednesday and had them on the Wednesday, so I didn't have to crave and obsess about having them on the
Yeah.
Saturday. The Saturday was just about a social occasion with friends, and the added bonus was the scones and the jam.
Yeah, because having an eating disorder, you're in bed with it, so to say.
Yeah,
It's your number one relationship. It's all you ever think about. So it disconnects you from first of all yourself and then also other people. You can't have a true connection if you have an eating disorder because your brain is primed to obsess about food. When you're going to eat, what you're not going to eat, how you're going to restrict eating, if you're going to binge, are you going to purge, what do you look like, are you sitting in the room, who's thinner than you, who's prettier than, like, you know, like, how the fuck can you have a present conversation and connect with someone when you are obsessed with food? So when you recover, I remember you messaging me not that long ago and being like, ugh, I'm just not bothered about food. Like, is that normal? I'm like, that's the downside of recovery. It can be, but
yeah.
it's a good downside if you compare it to the obsession that you used to have.
Yeah, I agree. At first, I was like a kid in a sweet shop because
Mm.
you very much encouraged me to, like you say, to be very free around food, which meant eating all the things initially in the first weeks of recovery that I hadn't eaten for such a long time. And I'm very nostalgic about food. So I went back to all the things I hadn't had since I was, the things I loved as a child when I had a really
Yeah.
normal approach to food. Nothing exciting, nothing exotic. It was the very basics. It was toast and butter. It was bowls of cereal. It was a Victoria sponge cake. It was the cheese and onion sandwich my mum used to make me. It was
Mm.
all of those things. And I used to be so excited for it. And then, yeah, not long ago, I did. I sent you a message and said, that's worn off now. And I so
Yeah.
enjoyed it, honestly. I mean, I would recommend it to anyone. It's, if you can face your fears, and it's not easy every day, but to really enjoy food again after 30 years was amazing. And I enjoy it less now, but yes, that is because it's just food. And that's
Yeah.
actually where I always wanted to get to in recovery. I just
Exactly.
wanted it to be just food.
Yeah. And going back to your recovery process around enjoying food, we can only enjoy food if we work through the guilt and the shame around it and what that means because you can't enjoy something when you feel bad for enjoying it. If you have a lot of shame around it, you can't enjoy it. I mean, you might enjoy the taste, but the whole experience is tainted because of this belief that it's not okay. So obviously that's why we need to do the deeper work. It's not just eating the food physically, it's what you make it mean. Like I always say, I don't care what you eat, I care how you feel about what you eat. It's the deeper stuff. So then that's what true freedom is, not just eating it physically, feeling free and joy and pleasurable and neutral around food, and that's it without having to compensate or feeling bad or body checking, just complete freedom. That's why I do what I do, because it's so possible to get here. And a lot of people have gone through recovery to restrict less, like what you said at the beginning, but true recovery is complete freedom.
Yeah, yeah. I think, and I'm glad you just explained that, because when I spoke to people about the approach that I was going to take with recovery about food freedom, everybody immediately interpreted that to go to mean about the amount of food and the type of food. People, I think, when you say to them being free around food, because I think most people do restrict even when they don't have an eating disorder, they feel
Yeah.
that if they are free around food, they will actually lose control around food. They think that if they weren't control, if they weren't sticking to a rigid plan and calorie amount and whatever, that if they were truly free around food, that to them would be eating the pizza all the time and eating this all the time. And actually, it's not that, because once you start to allow that, actually you realise that food freedom is. It's yes, you might indulge in that first, like you say, when you're kind of in recovery, you need your calories, you crave all those kind of foods. Food freedom is, like you say, it's about how you feel about what you eat
Yes.
when you eat it. So if you do indulge, you feel fine about it. It's about making choices that I don't want a pizza today, actually, I want a salad, and knowing that isn't linked to your eating disorder.
Yes, absolutely. And also with what you said about people think they will lose control over food, good. I have no control over my food. I don't try to control my food. I naturally choose what food I want in the present moment, and it can be different each day. And that's freedom to me. If I try to control my food, I will be out of control or severely in control, and that's an eating disorder. So when people say, oh my God, I'm going to lose control, good. I don't want you to be in control of your food. I reframed, because when I first started recovery, I was like, oh my God, I'm out of control. I chose, this was just a Victoria thing, I chose to reframe the opposite to control, not meaning out of control, meaning freedom. And a thought came
Yeah,
to me when I was walking one day. If you was living under a dictatorship of a government, I'm not caught up on what's happening in the world and where, but I'm sure there's places who are in a dictatorship. They're being controlled. If that dictator left that country, they wouldn't then be out of control. I'm sure they would feel freedom and
yeah,
liberation because they're no longer being dictated. So when we're in an eating disorder, we think that we're in control. We're not, because what we think we're in control of is actually controlling us. So when we lose control and get out of control, that's a positive, because then if we allow ourselves to see it this way and surrender to the freedom it brings, that's where it's at. When we're like, oh shit, I'm out of control, try and control, grasp, micromanage, I'll only eat chocolate at the weekends, and all these things, you keep yourself in the cycle of an eating disorder.
yeah, yeah. True. Yeah, you're right. Freedom is. I think. I just wonder if people who don't appreciate that mindset think there can only be one way or another. Do you know what I mean? I
Mm,
think I know people who say, "Oh, if I could eat whatever I want, I'd eat pizza all the time."
yep.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but I think they would actually find, if like you say, if they were really free around food, that they would eat pizza as much as they wanted, but they wouldn't want it all the time, because they've got the freedom to have it when they want to have it. And I think sometimes people think that there can't be that lovely mid place where we can have what we want and eat what we want without feeling bad about it, without, like you say, it just being a natural thing. I think people maybe have a sense that they have to be either in kind of some kind of restrictive place with food, or the complete opposite. And actually, the best place to be is in the middle, which is freedom, isn't it? It's just like you say, it's how you feel about it, not restricting it, and just having that kind of freedom of choice. And I think that is probably, you can only recover when you have that peace. I've talked a lot about peace in my head in recovery, and that's where I finally got, and I could cope with all of the changes in my body once I had that peace in my head. Because weight
Yes.
gain, we can talk about that. Weight gain is again another reason people fear recovery, who struggle in recovery, because they're scared of weight gain, and most of us, once we start to eat normally, are likely to gain weight. I certainly had to gain weight. So if people are scared of that, I guess, how would you explain to people how we get over that fear of weight gain.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing for me. A lot of people I work with, it's not always the biggest thing. It mostly is. It's the most common fear, the fear of weight gain. There's always something underneath the fear of weight gain. It's not fear of weight gain in a vacuum. Other people, it's the fear of losing control, depending on the childhood and the experiences they've had. But for me, I remember there was this thing that came up years ago. I was like a couple of years into recovery, and this thing came up on Facebook. You know how I'm not on Facebook much anymore, I'm more on Instagram. But on Facebook, like, you'd bring up, oh, last year you did this thing, and you can repost it. And it was 3 years in a row this like question came up, and it was the alphabet, and it was like asking questions for each letter of the alphabet, and one of them for the F was like, what's the biggest thing you fear in life? And since this came out, the past version of me, for 3 years in a row, my biggest fear was gaining weight, not losing my mum, not dying, not anything traumatic. It was fear of weight gain. It wasn't the absolute biggest, most petrifying, terrifying fear of my entire life. Now, if you're working with someone who knows what they're doing in recovery, can you still hear me? Because it says the internet's unstable. Can you still hear me okay?
Oh, I can. You went a bit frozen for a minute, but I can hear you now.
You got me back? Okay. Um, so
Yes, yeah, yeah. I don't know
Yeah,
what happened
okay.
there.
So
Sorry.
if you're working with someone who knows what they're doing and who knows how to go this deep, we need to look at why the fear of weight gain is the worst thing in the world for you, because it's not the weight gain in and of itself, it's what you make that mean. And for me, and for many people who have that petrifying terror, fear of weight gain, is because weight gain means unsafety, danger, like basically it means death to the nervous system. So we need to unpack all of that. Where's that come from? It's not just society perpetuates it, but it's childhood stuff. And we need to unpack all of that, and only then, when we understand why we have this innate fear of weight gain, then can we face the fear and move past it. You can face the fear anyway, but we need to unpack it as to see why, because our body image struggles are protecting us against something, else we wouldn't have them. So we need to understand, like, what's this body image fear protecting me from? What do I think will happen if I gain weight? And we need to face those fears, because we can't just talk about getting over a fear. Let's say you had a fear of spiders. If you wanted to, and let's say I was a overcoming your spider fear coach, and you came to me, and all we did is talk about how you overcome your fear of spiders. Just talked about it in depth. You read podcasts about it and books about it and all the things. Unless you're physically with me supporting you through holding spiders, or first of all being in the room with them, like whatever the baby steps, you will not overcome your fear. So this
Yeah.
goes to say with weight gain, you don't purposely, on purpose, try to gain weight to overcome your fear. It's usually a side effect of recovery, depending on where someone is. If they're on the restrict binge purge cycle, sometimes people lose weight. If they're on the higher end of their spectrum, some people stay the same weight, a lot of people gain weight. So you just have to act as if you're not afraid of weight gain, which of course you are. Do the work as to understand why you're so terrified of weight gain, and then take each moment one day at a time. This is the body I have right now. Do I like it? No, but I am safe. I'm not in danger, and tomorrow I'll deal with it tomorrow. And it's like a bit by bit, moment by moment, uncovering patriarchy, why feel you need to look beautiful or attractive. There's so, as you can see, I can't answer it directly because there's so many layers to all of this. But that being said, you need to do body image work and understand what you're trying to control underneath your weight, because it's not your weight in and of a vacuum, it's everything underneath that.
Yeah, I agree. And you're right when you talk about weight, I guess weight gain potentially being a side effect of recovery. For me, it was a necessity as
Yeah.
part of my recovery. And for other people, like you say, they may or may not gain weight, but I think you have to be open to the fact that it may be a side effect of your recovery. And for me, and I think you can apply that to any illness, whatever your maybe medication given to recover, or surgery that you have to recover, there's potentially side effects of every way to potentially recover. And it's if you want what is on the other end of recovery,
Mm-hmm.
even if that means you have to go through the side effects. So for me, the side effect was, and I'll say it again, was so worth the peace in my head. That was just, it was just a side effect. It became such, as recovery went through, it became less and less of a fear and less important, because I think I've said this before, the heavier my body got, the lighter my head got.
Yeah. And that's
And
so
there's
been the
peace of
case.
mind is priceless.
Yeah, and also our bodies change when we're getting older. Not necessarily our bodies change dramatically, because we kind of live at our set point when we have like a natural and free relationship with food and ourselves. But we change, we get older, our priorities change. Like I haven't been to the gym for a year since I've had my girl, because my priorities have changed, my body's healing, and my body's changed a bit, and that's okay. Because when you actually live in true freedom, all the other stuff like aging and beauty labor, that just becomes like something that the past you used to worry about. And so where did I want to go here? I've had a train of thought and it's gone, so I'm going to hand it back to you and see if it comes back.
Well, I literally, over the last couple of weeks, I think I got to body neutral, which is, we talked about, you may not get to the point where you love your body in recovery, because it will change and it will look unfamiliar and it will feel unsafe. And actually, I think just for me, like you say, I think it was October last year that me and you first had our first coaching session. And it's taken me up till literally the last couple of weeks. And I'm at home, in my dad's bedroom at the moment, back with my sister. And now I've got to the point where I feel like I said to my sister the other day, like I was kind of, looking in the mirror, and I kind of said to her, I was like, look at my bum. And I was like, isn't that the cutest bum you've ever seen? Now, it's not the cutest bum you've ever seen. But for me, all of a sudden, when I looked at it in the mirror, I was like, oh, because I never used to have a bottom. I had zero bottom. But I've now got to the point where I can look at my body and just kind of be like, I didn't just want to feel it, I actually wanted to say it out loud. We can get to a point where we start to accept our bodies, and I don't love all the bits of my body, but at the moment, I love my bum. I thought it looked quite cute. I thought it looked quite nice, and I quite like having one for a change. So,
Yeah.
like you say, that fear of, at one point, if you told me that I would have a bigger bottom than I had, I was so afraid of weight gain, I wouldn't have wanted it. And now, I think it's the best thing in the world. I think I've got a great bum. And next week
I
I
love
might not, but
that.
I'm going with it for this week. This week's great bum week.
I love that, and I did remember you've actually sparked what I was going to say, so I'm going to share something what in comparison to what you said, and also share something else. Our priorities are not our priorities. Our preferences can change over time. So my preference was always to be thin. Even when I'd kind of hit recovery land, my preference was still to be thin. Like I was fine. I was in body neutrality. I was like, I'm not going to restrict ever again. Like I'm loving myself and all the things. But I still had a preference to be thinner. But over time, because my values have strengthened and deepened, and looking a certain way, I just don't value that anymore in myself or in anybody else. It doesn't mean I can't appreciate a nice body aesthetically from what I've been conditioned to appreciate. I get that. But like now, for example, not just because I've had a baby, but I have had a baby and like I've got a little pouch, and I'm like, that is so fucking cute, because my baby lived in there, and like my
Yeah.
body literally took a cell from my husband and a cell from me and then created this life. And even before the baby, when I look at my stretch marks and cellulite, because whatever you choose to focus on expands. So I would look at my stretch marks and cellulite, which I used to hate and feel disgusted at, and I'll be like, you know what, I might not like the way they look, but they tell the story of what I've been through. So like when I smile, I have laughter lines on my eyes. I wouldn't have them if I didn't smile a lot.
Yeah.
So I chose to look at them in a different way, like battle wounds or like tiger stripes, whatever you want to call them. My body's is telling a story of the life I've lived. And the life I have lived and I'm living includes recovering from abuse, an eating disorder, other stuff. Like, that's amazing. So we don't have to necessarily like the way our bodies look, but we can appreciate and give meaning to the parts that we used to reject. And that can change everything. And the part I was going to say, which I forgot before, was what really helped me was looking at women my size and bigger on Instagram every day on purpose for at least 10 minutes. And at the start of recovery, when I decided to fully recover, I was like, I wouldn't say this now because what I'm going to say is actually fat phobic, but I had to say this to myself at the time. I was like, I'm going to get fat and I'm just going to learn how to deal with it. And I didn't want to gain weight, but I was like, right, I'm going to get fat, like whatever that meant to me at the time. I was going to gain weight. So may as well practice being ready for that to happen by looking at women similar shape to me, like bigger legs, smaller waist, bigger arms, maybe someone at the gym who was curvy and looked like they were loving life and not giving a shit. And I would prime myself and condition my brain to be like, look, it's safe, because safety is a key word in recovery and for the nervous system. It is safe to be in a bigger body. You can actually have a life full of love and joy and peace and good sex and good food in a bigger body. So that really helped me. And every time I had a bit of a wobble, I'd go on Instagram, go on my favourite people. In fact, I interviewed one last week. She's called Kate. So the Instagram is Kate_Y Talk. You'll find her. She was a big support in my recovery. So that's really helpful for people to do.
Yeah, I think, like you say, we have to start. I now do this. I always used to look for thin people, because I was drawn to thin people because I was obsessed with thin, and so
Yeah.
all I saw around me, or what I would definitely notice and try and compare myself to, was other thin people. Was I thinner than them? Could I be as thin as them? If I was, oh God, if my legs were a bit longer, they'd be a bit thinner. All of that. And now, like you say, I'm so much more open-minded in looking at what is actually attractive. And I think I said this to you one day. I was having a bit of a body image day, and I was taking the dog for a walk, and in my head I was all in my head about changes in my body. And there was a girl walking in front of me, and she was naturally a curvy girl, and she had jeans on and a top, so that I could just see her bottom, that lovely kind of natural movement of this lovely curvy bottom. And I was mesmerized by it. And I was walking in front of her, and I thought, and even though I didn't have that at the time, I was very early in recovery and had very little bottom. I decided that I was going to try and walk and try and make my bum do that same movement to see what it would feel like. And actually, it
Yeah.
felt really sexy, really empowering.
Yes.
And
Yes.
even though I was having to make my body move that way, she had a body that just naturally moved because she had those lovely natural curves. And I think you have to get used to appreciating what actually really is, because lots of bodies are beautiful. And it was the first time I think I'd ever looked at someone a different size than me and was mesmerized by how amazingly beautiful that bottom was, to the point that I walked the whole way home trying to replicate what she was doing. And it really, it felt like like literally my confidence from feeling a bad body day, as I moved my body that way that it might naturally move when it was bigger. This confidence came up in me for the first time, and I think I got a real sense of, I'm going to be okay in a bigger body. I just, like you say, it's just about
Yeah.
embracing it.
I
And
love that.
yeah, I walked like I was in London Fashion Week the whole way home with the dog, even though we didn't have anything really to back it up. There was nothing really moving, but I chose to walk like I was confident and sexy in my body. And she wasn't trying; she just was. And I think, for me now, I
Yeah.
do that. If I'm having a bad body day, I will literally walk and move like she did, as if I own and feel confident and sexy in my body, and it can completely change your mindset.
That is so freaking powerful because that what you've said, acting as if like embodying that energy, because confidence and sexy isn't a body size, it's an energy.
Yeah.
I guarantee our listeners, they can name at least one person who doesn't tick all the boxes in patriarchal beauty standards. But there's just something about the person. They're just attractive, even though you wouldn't want their stomach or whatever it is. There's just something about them. That's self-love, baby, and natural confidence and just oozing energy. And the good thing is, like, to practice that, you can, I'm going to use the phrase, fake it till you make it. You can practice having your shoulders back to open your heart to the world. Because if you're walking around, you're like with your shoulders hunched and trying not to take up space, if you just shift and stand up tall and open your heart. That feels vulnerable, but you're opening your heart to the world and to yourself. That has a massive effect, like you've experienced, on how you feel inside. And instead of getting your stomach or like squeezing your fat in disgust, like stroke your curves. Like imagine like your body is like that of a goddess, and you're just like, oh my god, wow, look at this beautiful curvy woman's body. Like whatever you want to look for, you will find. So you have to use your intention and effort and creativity to
Yeah.
create your own experience, and you have the power to do that. That's so freaking freeing to know that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I'm mindful of your time. I know you have a little one. How long I thought we'd finish this because we'll definitely talk again because I'm sure there's a million things we could go into. Um, have you got 5 more minutes?
I think I have. It's very quiet downstairs. I can't hear anything, so I'm good. Five, ten
Okay.
minutes.
Okay, so a little bit getting to know Victoria for the people who are not listening, and a little bit for me. So, if you don't mind, a few just less eating disorder questions, and a bit more getting to know you, just
Ooh,
to finish
yeah.
this off, and then we'll you can and obviously I want people to be able to find you as well. So, I've got my notes here because right, if you were not a coach, so going
Yeah.
back to pre, obviously your job now probably triggered by your eating disorder, but if you were 10 again and or maybe you did know when you were 10, if you weren't a coach, what was it you always wanted to be or you think you would want to be now?
I two different answers. I always wanted to be a mounted police officer.
Ah,
One,
okay.
because I'd rode horses my entire life up until the age of 30 and used to train young horses and show jump and all the things, still ride now. And and the primary other reason for the police officer part was because my parents were both police officers, and I liked the idea of having a varied job and not sitting behind a desk all day. What would I do now if I wasn't a coach? I'm going to kind of answer as in a cheating way, but I would be a therapist.
You're made for talking to people, helping people, sharing. I mean, you've got that natural, and I know this from having worked with you. I think it just emanates from you a kind of a kindness and a support, and I think that's what you're made to do anyway. So
Born to
yeah,
do that.
yeah,
Thank you for
yeah,
reflecting that back to me. But yeah, I'd
yeah.
be a therapist.
Okay, right. And from a non-eating disorder perspective, but if you just because you don't like it, if you could eliminate one food that no one should ever have to eat again, what would it be? Do you have anything you really hate that you just
Yes.
think should be eliminated?
I want to say olives, but I did have an olive the other day and I didn't spit it out, so that's progress.
Okay.
5 minutes, darling, 5 minutes. Yeah, olives. I used to think they tasted like horse haylage because I have tried horse haylage, so yes, I've tried it, but I couldn't understand it. But I would say olives. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Mine would be anything that tastes or smells like air freshener that is put into food. So
Oh
lavenders,
yeah,
rose waters, anything that is also the smell of an air freshener should never be in food.
true. I'm gonna also add artificial shit that's not even food, like low calorie syrups. Like they should just be banned.
Yeah. Oh God, you won't have to look at them to know that that's not great. Okay.
Yeah.
What's your favourite thing about yourself?
How loving I am, how much I genuinely care about others and wanting to help them. I love that about me. I've just got such a
Yes.
big heart.
I love that about you too.
Thank you.
Okay. The last thing that made you cry.
Recently I've got back from surprising my sister for her 40th birthday. So she had a party that was a surprise, and then I hid in the background of the surprise party. Then when she got over the surprise of the party, I walked forward. It's on my Instagram as a reel if anyone wants to check out her reaction. And her reaction was just incredible. And as soon as I saw her reaction, I just burst into tears. Like it was such a beautiful experience. So
Oh,
then
so
a few
happy
weeks
tears.
after, yeah, happy tears.
Great. And the best piece of advice you've ever been given, because you give great advice. So, what do you think is the best piece of advice you've ever been given? God, there's
There's
probably
so
so
many.
much because I know you
Yeah,
read and learn and take. You're constantly wanting to learn
constantly.
more and kind
I
of
think the first thing that came to me, which actually is ironically the answer, is trust yourself. Because this is such a cliche thing to say, but it's so freaking true. every one of us has the answer within us. It's so whether we get quiet to find the answer ourselves, because it will come if we're quiet enough, whether we practice connecting to our intuition so it just comes and we start to trust that and act on that, or whether you have someone like a great coach to ask you the right questions to get to the answer that you already know, because everything you need is already within you. So if you trust yourself, there's nothing you can't do in the world.
Okay, great answer. Okay, so for everyone listening, and I can vouch for Victoria, anyone who is currently looking for a coach, I can completely recommend Victoria. But where can people find you if they're curious and want to see that reel of you crying when when you're sitting with your sister's party? Where can people find you?
So I'm most active on Instagram, and that's Victoria Kleinsman Official on Instagram. And my website, victoriakleinsman.com. Everything at the footer is of my website, and also my free support group is on there. There's free coaching in there, shit ton of value. And if you want to then invest in yourself to work with me, I have group coaching, and then I have exclusive one-to-one coaching. So there's all different layers depending on where the person's at. And my podcast, of course, which Tara's been on, called The Body Love Binge, on any platform. Come find me there as well.
There won't be a question that you have that will not have some point been answered, or that Victoria will answer on that podcast.
Yes, I actually
Every
have
eating disorder question will be there.
Yeah, on my story highlights. If you go on my profile, the story highlights is that you can actually submit a question for the podcast.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. I know you've got other things to do, and I'm just so appreciative of another hour with you. Obviously, I'm going to be speaking to you again soon off our podcast, but it was really nice to catch up with you today, see you face to face, and thank you for spending some time and helping people who are listening to my podcast. I'm very, very grateful.
It's been a pleasure, Tara. I've really enjoyed it, and the hour's gone so fast. And if it wasn't for my little one, I'd talk to you for another half an hour. I could just keep going with you.
We will definitely do it again, because I'm sure that there's so much more we could go through. But for now, have a fabulous day, and thank you so much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Bye.
Lots of love. Bye-bye.
Bye.